Welcome everybody to look at the fifth film in the Sean Connery six film collection. Now these are all on 4K and in yes with a steelbook physical aspect to them. And yeah, this fifth film in the collection and in the James Bond series in general is You Only Live Twice from 1967. So this is directed by Lewis Gilbert, who would go on to direct another two Bond films in the series, both of which were with Roger Moore, and they were The Spy Who Loved Me from 10 years after this one, and Moonraker 2 years after that. Um, Spy Who Loved Me is probably my favourite of the three that he did, but this is probably my second favourite overall. And yeah, he also did Sink the Bismarck, Cast a Dark Shadow, The Good Die Young, and HMS Defiant, also known as Damn the Defiant, all of which are also excellent films, all highly recommended. So this clock's in at 117 minutes long, had a budget of $9.5 million, so half a million more than what Thunderball had. But unfortunately, it had nearly $30 million less at the box office at 111.6 million. So still a hit, no doubt about that. And again, the third Bond film in a row to crack the 100 million mark. But yeah, dropping nearly $30 million while costing a little bit more certainly might have seemed like the series was in trouble in some regards. But still, obviously it wasn't, because it lasts for another 50 years or so after that. So yeah, we've got the normal cast members that we've talked about before, but in addition to those, we've got Akiko Wakabayashi, who was also in King Kong vs Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and Dagora, all three of which are obviously kaiju films. Also stars Mie Hama, who was in King Kong vs Godzilla as well as its sequel, King Kong Escapes. Also have stars Tetsuro Tamba, who I've seen in 14 other films, in varied films like Three Outlaw Samurai, Harakiri, The Bullet Train, Submersion of Japan, and even Ricky-O, The Story of Ricky, which is an insane film if you've never seen that before. Also stars Teru Shimada, who was in Tokyo Joe and King Rat, Karen Dorr, who we've talked about earlier this year in the likes of The Invisible Dr. Mabusa and The Strangler of Blackpool Castle. She was also in Alfred Hitchcock's Topaz. And finally, we've got the likes of Donald Pleasance, who I've seen in 26 other films. We've already also talked about him all earlier this year. So he was in the likes of the Halloween series, but underrated films from him, I feel like, are the 1982 version of Alone in the Dark, Soldier Blue, and I Don't Want to Be Born. So you also have a second appearance from Burt Kwok, who plays a completely different character to the one they played in Goldfinger. But it's nice to see that he returns in this film, even if as a different character, playing a bad guy as part of Spectre. So a mysterious spacecraft captures Russian and American space capsules and brings the two superpowers to the brink of war. James Bond investigates the case in Japan and comes face to face with his archenemy, Blofeld. So, despite this still being the worst in the series from the 60s, by quite a margin as far as I'm concerned, I definitely have found myself warming to this slightly more over time. Now, sure, it still has its issues, chief among which is changing Bond into a Japanese person, which is not only incredibly problematic, obviously he's akin to blackface or yellowface. It also doesn't even serve any real purpose to the plot, because we are told he needs to be in disguise to go onto an island. However, no one on the island or even the village he goes to is even part of Spectre. So it just quite frankly feels pointless, because he doesn't come across anyone that could, blow his cover. And even at one point, he nearly gets assassinated. So it's clear that they already know he's there anyway. So yeah, it just seems entirely pointless, really. The same can be kind of said for the wedding, which, although respectful to Japanese culture and traditions, does feel like a scene that exists just to extend the running time. While the plot is also hardly filled with surprises. That said, Connery is once again great in the lead role. The supporting cast is really good. The action scenes are hugely fun, especially in the final battle scene. The supporting cast is really good. Yeah, I've already said that. Sorry. The action scenes are hugely fun. The set design is superb by Ken Adam, who obviously designed the massive volcano lair, which would obviously go on to be parodied in other films, but still an impressive feat of design and production. It is the plot, though predictable, is at least engrossing. It is mostly well paced, while the production is overall solid, and the score title song is excellent. It's probably my favourite title song from the 60s, to be honest, especially in terms of ones with vocals. I do prefer the On Her Majesty's Service theme song in that film, although that has no vocals. So yeah, as far as vocalized songs go, this is probably my favourite from the decade. And the score by John Barry overall is probably my favourite as well. It's a really good incorporation of Japanese kind of cultural theme music kind of stuff, and then blended into the Bond theme as well. And then you also have the "You Only Live Twice" main motif played throughout the film as well, and it all just really blends well together and just feels generally genuinely quite different to the other Bond themes from the same decade. I also really like the fact that it's one of those few Bond films. I think it might be the only Bond film. I might be getting this wrong, but one of the few, at the very least, Bond films to not ever be set in London. It's set in Hong Kong and Japan, and that's it. The initial opening is in Hong Kong. We then get the usual M and Moneypenny meeting on a submarine, and then we go straight to Japan, and that's it. So yeah, I really do like that fact about it. To be honest, it really does make it feel more like a different kind of beast overall, and it is obviously a different kind of beast because yeah, production's a lot bigger than the previous films. The general production design just feels a lot grander in scale, which is despite the fact that the budget is only $500,000 more than Thunderball, but it feels like the budget has been used a lot more in terms of just the general production design, the action scenes and such, rather than cast or general locations and such like that. Because yeah, even though Japan does look beautiful at times, it is obviously, or most likely was, a far cheaper place to film than say the Bahamas or Jamaica or anything like that. So there's the discs. And there's little Nelly, which is involved in a helicopter scene, which is again really rather quite fun. Kind of makes the helicopter scenes in previous films look a little bit tame. You know, you look at From Russia with Love, for instance, where he's against one. In this film, he's against several. And on the back, we have Blofeld with his white cat, which obviously we have seen in previous films, but we hadn't seen Blofeld as an actual character until this film. We'd only heard his voice and seen him in Dark Shadows and such like that. In fact, he was actually played by an actor that played one of the Dr. Dent, I think it was, in Doctor No. He actually went on to portray Blofeld in a physical presence in From Russia with Love and Thunderball. So yeah, but I think it was Anthony Dawson now that I'm thinking of it. So, but yeah, he wouldn't be actually voice the character that was dubbed after the fact. So yeah, so it's interesting as far as the film series goes because it does feel like a an evolution of the previous films that involved Spectre. Because obviously, like I said, we never saw them in Doctor No. We only saw Doctor No himself. In From Russia with Love, we only saw his minions. Same with Thunderball. And then in this, it just feels like, yeah, we've finally got now to the point where we've seen Blofeld, seen what he's like, seen what he can do. And then that would continue on into the next film as well. So, yeah, overall, a really rather good film. But like I said, nowhere near the classic of the previous 4 films or the subsequent one that we'd get with George Lazenby. But it is at least a damn sight better than what we'd get with Connery again in Diamonds Are Forever, which, yeah, we'll get to when we get to the reviewing that film, but I absolutely do not like that film anywhere near as much as this one or the previous Connery films. So yeah, highly recommend seeing this if you haven't already. Like I said, it's not my favourite from the 60s, but it is still a solid 4 out of 5. I have rated it lower than that in the past, but like I said, I have come to warm to it over time. So yeah, and the 4K itself looks really, really rather good as well. Sounds really good as well on top of that, especially when it comes to the action scenes and when we get a lot of explosions, especially in the end, when the whole volcano layer is exploding and nonsensically turns into an active volcano despite being dormant. But yeah, we'll let that pass. Still, if you have seen this film before, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.